and we are going to get started as we are half part super excited about the opportunity that we have to have our fall athletics season. And then we are half a little bit feeling the pressure to make sure that we handle this fragile opportunity very, very well. And so with that being said, for those of you that don't know, my name is Dr. Chris Hobbs. I'm the Director of Athletics here at the Kings Academy. In the blue shirt is Mr. Adam Winters. He's our Director of Athletic Operations here at Kings. And then in the black shirt is Mr. Tyler Hamilton. He's our Director of Sport Medicine here at the Kings Academy. And then the headshot that you see would be Mrs. Kelly Fogelman. She is here tonight. She will not be presenting anything. I tried to convince her to present something. She decided she wouldn't. She refused. But she will be managing the chat box for us and helping to provide some additional information as we move through this protocol orientation tonight. Now, I do want to be very, very clear. Tonight's objective is very, very narrow. And that objective is to talk specifically about the protocols and the standards that we are asking our Kings Academy coaches and student athletes and ultimately our parents to uphold for the practice experience. And so that is the focus this evening. There is lots of questions that I'm sure you have. And quite honestly, there's still some questions we have as we are planning this out and building out this season literally on the fly. There's a great analogy about how complex something can be, as if you were trying to build an airplane while it's in the air. And a little bit that's what I feel about this fall athletic season. And so tonight we are going to focus exclusively on protocols, what we will ask our student athletes, coaches, and families to uphold and abide by in order to safely practice. One of the other reasons we're focusing so finely on that is because things are changing so much that we're not going to talk about game day tonight. We have an idea of what game day will look like, but we're not going to talk about it because things are that fluid. We're not going to talk about transportation for athletic events tonight. We have an idea. We have protocols built, but things are so fluid. We're not going to spend any time on that because I really do need the entire Kings Academy to lean in with us to make sure that this is done well. And so no matter what you might think about COVID, the bottom line is that COVID is a serious risk to our athletic season, whether or not you feel it's a risk to our student athletes, whether or not you feel it's a risk to our school campus. The bottom line is it is a risk to whether or not we can have an athletic season, which is why if we want our athletic season, we all need to link arms and proceed under very, very specific protocols and guidelines. And if we do that, I think that we will take this very, very fragile opportunity and really be able to make the most of it. Now, I also tonight, there will be some things I'll say tonight, and I will say them in a manner meant to be very bold, but I do not mean to be rude. And so please do the best you can to interpret my boldness as simply that, bold, and not intending to be rude, but I will be very clear and very direct about some things. Just a couple, maybe about a week ago, when the Big Ten announced that they were closing down fall sports, including football. You may not know this, but the Big Ten is the wealthiest conference in the country. I would have guessed the SEC, but it's actually the Big Ten, where places like University of Michigan reside, where Penn State reside, where Ohio State reside. And when they announced to shut down football, obviously it caused a massive stir nationally. And Jim Harbaugh, who's the coach at University of Michigan, put out a statement really bragging about how great Michigan had done for 8 weeks, creating a safe football experience for their players. And right in the midst of him bragging about it and sharing all the amazing stats and how low the positivity rate was and how low the number of positive tests were and everything that everyone had done to make it safe, right in the middle of that statement, he put two simple sentences that hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, "This is not easy. This is hard." And man, that really resonated with me. And so I think that is very, very true. And so with that being said, the protocols that we're going to ask you to abide by, they are not easy. They are hard. And so with that being said, let me give you two reasons why this is so challenging. Number one, because it must be every single student athlete every time this fall. every practice, every weightlifting session, every run, every cross-country meet, every football game, every volleyball match, every swim contest, every golf match, every time, every student athlete must abide by these protocols. The second reason that this is so challenging is because of representation and community. You see, the athletic department here at the King's Academy is just one small corner of a much broader, larger organization. And so as we execute our athletic department and give our student athletes an opportunity to compete, we have to worry about 4- and 5-year-olds running around on our campus in our elementary school because we share this campus with them. We have to worry about faculty members that are in an age demographic that is concerning under the pandemic that we're in right now. We have to worry about the reputation of our school and what people would say if we were perceived as handling this carelessly, because that would negatively reflect on over 300 employees. And so there is a tremendous amount at stake right now. And so this is challenging for a lot of reasons, but the two biggest reasons, in my opinion, is because it has to be every student athlete every time. We have to execute our protocols perfectly, and representation of a much larger community. And so with that being said, you're going to hear from Mr. Hamilton in just a little bit. You'll hear from Mr. Winters in just a little bit on different aspects of our protocols. I want to share with you the core concepts on which we build our protocols. First of all, we did not come up with these on our own. We have spent an incredible amount of time studying guidelines from all sorts of organizations. The CDC, obviously, the National Federation of High Schools, which is ultimately the national organization that we answer to as a high school athletic department, the Florida High School Athletic Association. We have also taken protocols from the NATA, the National Athletic Trainers Association, which is one of the organizations that certifies Mr. Hamilton. We have taken advice from the NIAAA. We have taken precedent from the United States Military Academy. We've taken precedent from the SEC. We've taken precedent from just a wide array of places to synthesize this information, to synthesize these protocols and build protocols that we think will create a very safe athletic experience for the King's Academy. And I can't say this enough. I do believe it's very possible to provide a safe athletic experience for our student athletes, even under the stress, if you will, the circumstances of the pandemic. So I believe very much that we are at the forefront of providing a safe athletic experience for student athletes here at the King's Academy. And so here's some core concepts for you that we built these protocols on and helped us to synthesize information from all those sources I just referenced. First of all, every practice, every training session, and ultimately every game must involve a thorough screening process. You see, in order to have real athletics, we have to set aside social distancing for a time. And we believe if we're going to do that, that we have to show an overabundance of caution in other areas to accommodate for that. And so what we have done is we have created redundant gateways, a very intensive screening process to make sure that we catch student athletes that are either pre-symptomatic, symptomatic, or they might not be symptomatic of necessarily COVID, but they may have an illness that just really concerns us. We have to catch student athletes like that and screen them out from participating before they infect their teammates. And we also, this is kind of something that's evolved over the summer as we've studied the information. Hygiene, cleanliness is a huge deal. And so part of our screening process is to catch our student athletes that are not as clean and are not as hygienic as they ought to be. And I think all of us having teenagers, I have teenagers, we can very easily understand how sometimes our teenagers are not as hygienic or as clean as they need to be. So our redundant screening process is to catch student athletes that are either unwell and we want to keep them away from their teammates, or they're not very clean, they're not hygienic, and we need to keep them away because that can create some contamination and cause some, if you will, some flaws in the process that could expose us to some greater concerns with COVID. So that's the first concept, is a redundant screening process for everything. Every game, every practice, every training session. No one will participate in athletics at the King's Academy without going through a redundant screening process. The second concept that we have built these protocols on is an overemphasis on student athletes wearing clean clothes and using clean equipment. And so that involves not only cleanliness before they arrive, but that involves a ton of effort to clean after they have left. and for them to clean themselves after they have left. And so an incredible focus on cleanliness both before and after is a huge concept for us right now. Our coaches will go to great lengths to sanitize. Here's another concept for you: throughout the practice process. So we're not just going to sanitize before and after, but our coaches are actually going to build sanitizing, if you will, habits right into the practice experience for the kids. It will not disrupt the athletic experience very much, but it will be intentional stops. It will be intentional redundancies of cleaning to make sure that sanitizing is even happening almost seamlessly throughout the practice experience. One of the core concepts is that social distancing will be used when it is applicable. And so a perfect example would be standing in line for a drill. If you know good sports, you really shouldn't stand in line very long at any drill, but inevitably, no matter how well you've planned practice, there'll be some line standing. And so in line standing, we should social distance. In film sessions, we should social distance, and things like that. And so social distance, when applicable in the practice process, is being built in. And then our post-event sanitizing measures must be thorough and consistent. And so we have purchased a electrostatic sprayer for our athletic performance center, for our weight room. And so that we can quickly and thoroughly sanitize that space. We have another one that we've purchased that will be in the field house. So we can sanitize those spaces. Our coaches will have easy access to most any basic sanitizing equipment that would be FDA approved. It would be effective against viruses like COVID, and it would obviously be safe for our student athletes to be around. They'll have easy access to that. So those are some of the core concepts that we've built and synthesized these protocols around. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Hamilton right now, and I'm going to let him go ahead and share his screen. He's got a PowerPoint he's going to walk us through as we continue to talk about these protocols. And Mr. Hamilton's going to talk about our screening process right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Just need to learn how to advance my slides. Here we are. Our daily process is going to consist of three main steps. And I'll talk about each one of these in turn, but we start with what we're just gonna call here SWAY Medical. And this will come through a daily email notification to every student athlete who's participating. And that's done during the day, at some point during the school day. After school, we have a couple of other screenings. One is what we call primary screening, and that will take place each day in the Loveland Athletic Center. And that will be sort of our hub for screening every athlete through. If in some cases, an athlete may be referred to what's called a secondary screening, and that will take place in our athletic training clinic in the field house. And so here's what this looks like. The first step in our screening process is that we're going to use SWAY Medical, which is a web-based application that we currently use for concussion testing to help us in the process of decision-making when we have a suspected head injury. And they have expanded their line to include a COVID screening tool. And so we're gonna take advantage of that, and we're going to use that on a daily basis for student athletes to self-report symptoms. And we'll go through a series of symptoms and they just answer yes or no whether or not they've had those particular symptoms. And you can see one of the questions here on the screen. And so the athlete would just mark yes or no. It would move on to the next set of symptoms and so on. There's a window of time during the day that'll be open for student athletes to answer those questions. They will get an email each day reminding them to fill out their survey. At 2 o'clock, the window closes at 2:00 p.m. so that we may run a report of every team, and it will flag every athlete who either did not fill out the survey or who had a symptom that is concerning to us. And so we can take that report and use it at our primary screening station in order to direct anyone who needs to the secondary screening. This begins, our setup for SWAY is going to begin tomorrow. The student athletes will gather, with the exception of swimming. We have a separate screening process for swimming, but the other athletes on other teams will meet tomorrow in the Loveland Athletic Center after school, and we will take them through setting up a profile on SWAY, and that will include providing an email address where they will get their daily notification to fill out their symptom checklist. The SWAY medical app can be downloaded tonight, and I would highly recommend that you do that. This can be done on a cell phone, either Android or Apple. It can also be done on an iPad if that's the device that your student prefers. Download that app tonight, and then tomorrow it'll save us a little bit of time because we're going to mass screen, socially distanced and with masks on, but we're going to spread out throughout the gym, and we're going to run a single mass screening to get this underway. Our next screening is that primary screening. And so again, every day after school in the Loveland Athletic Center, we have certain time periods for each sport to report, and they will go through screening at a table staffed by their sports coaches. The elements of that primary screening are, as you see here. We'll know whether or not they've completed their symptom checklist. The coaches will have a couple additional verbal questions for the student athlete. That's also where coaches will make sure that the student athlete is bringing in clean clothes, or is wearing or has clean clothes and clean equipment for practice. And we also just make sure they still have their mask. They should have their mask throughout the day, and also that they have adequate amount of water. An easy visual on this would be to just have your student athlete bring a gallon jug if they can. It needs to be an adequate amount of water because at the moment, we are not going to provide water, either water bottles or coolers, or the water boy out on the football field. And so athletes, just like we've done all summer, are going to be responsible for bringing their own water for the time being. We want to make sure that they have adequate water. There are filling stations, of course, across campus, and our facilities folks have done a fabulous job of installing those filling stations across campus. But just please make sure that your student athlete brings a large enough container to carry adequate amounts of water. And then next we have the secondary screening. If somebody gets referred to secondary screening, then I will take that student athlete through a more thorough patient history. So I'll ask additional questions, and then I will also run through some vital signs. And very specifically, we look at, this is where we do temperature. We take heart rate, and we look at what's called blood oxygen saturation. And then at that point, we decide whether or not that athlete is prepared to or able, or if I'm comfortable with releasing that athlete to practice that day, or if we want to redirect them, have them go home, and we can make contact with a parent if we send them home to discuss next steps, whatever those may be. We're trying to work very hard in preparing for handling our student load. We're super excited to be back, and we're going to just continue to stay vigilant, stay updated on advances or updates in the research, in guidelines and that sort of thing. So we just will continue lifting this season, this whole school year up to our Lord, and trust ourselves, our school, to him, and we pray that you do the same. So I think with that, Chris, do you have anything? Do you want me to send this to Adam?
Actually, Tyler, I'll ask you to just click through as Adam talks through his slides. But before we do that, Tyler, some great questions come in the chat box from people regarding the Sway app. So Tyler, the only one I want to confirm with you in front of everyone is that the appropriate privacies are in place with the Sway app in regards to protecting the information of the young people.
Good question. So we have it where I am the administrator of the app, and I've given permission, certain permission, to Mrs. Fogelman, specifically to run a report of who has not completed their survey for that day, as well as, and there's just simply a flag next to each person's name that indicates that they have a concerning symptom. So it's just color coded. Either the student didn't finish it, or there's another color flag, and so Mrs. Fogelman will see that, and we'll convey the information of who needs to be referred to secondary screening to the coaches. So no other coaches, no other student athletes, no other individuals will have access to the Sway records. I have that permission. I have given administrators that are on this call certain permissions, but I run the Sway application.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Thank you. We're going to turn it over to Mr. Winters, and then Mr. Hamilton, I'll just ask if you can just click through the next couple of slides at Mr. Winters' direction.
Thank you, guys. Good evening. There'll be some reiteration, redundancies in the presentation, but I just want to make sure that you knew that we appreciate your trust and the opportunity to work with your son and daughter each and every day. We will do our best to provide a safe environment without taking away the athletic experience from the kids. I think it's important that we provide that excellent athletic experience and keep them safe, but not to have them overly concerned with it each and every day. We want them to be relaxed athletes as they come in. As mentioned previously, this will require a willing partnership with you, your athlete, our coaches, and staff. We will all share in this responsibility of providing a safe environment for our kids. And this is probably the most teamwork that's ever going to be needed from our community and from our athletes and coaches to make this work. We are going to count on you as parents to make some tough calls sometimes and help us with making decisions that are smart for the team on and off campus. And that's just sometimes reminding them, hey, you have other people that hinge on this and depend on you to make the right decisions. So for this all to work, as we talk about coming to practice healthy, we're going to have our athletes make healthy decisions on and off campus as well. I know that there are various viewpoints on COVID, and I don't think anybody has all the answers, but I do know that we're going to have to put aside kind of some of our thoughts and just kind of team up on this, and I know that it'll work. When the athletes come to practice, they will go through screening as previously mentioned and proceed to the locker rooms. When they go to the locker rooms, they will be separated and isolated by teams, and they will also be staggered as they enter the locker room. When they're in the locker room, they will be socially distanced and giving plenty of room to spread out and to get ready for practice. We'll have our coaches in there to supervise and make sure that there is social distancing, and then we'll ask them to wash their hands and then report to practice. Once practice begins, we'll have our coaches do as much social distancing as we can. As Dr. Hobbs mentioned before, when we're doing things like warm-ups or we're doing stretching or individual drills, they'll be socially distanced. But there is a time that we'll have to get in there and compete, prepare for the upcoming season. So know that the times that we spent, we'll provide safe environments for them and give them plenty of opportunities to wash hands and sanitize. During practice, we'll stop at least once an hour to go through and sanitize balls and equipment, and that'll be done either by a set time or coaches will use some creativity and do a break or do a team activity during that time period in transition of drills. After practice, coaches will be responsible to sanitize everything. That goes from volleyball posts to tackling dummies to shoulder pads to helmets. And we'll use wipes, we'll use aerosol disinfectant, and then we have an electrostatic spray that we'll use with vital oxide to try to get every bit and piece of the equipment that we're using. We believe that we're doing the best we can to help provide a safe environment, strong sanitation, and honestly believe that the protocols and the steps that we've taken are probably the best in the county and the state. And I think you won't find a safer environment and place to put your son or daughter. However, the best precaution, as mentioned before, is we need healthy, clean athletes to show up to practice. And when they do their part there, that puts us all in a safer place and opportunity to keep things clean and sanitized. We are honored to partner with you guys in this venture. And in many ways, it seems like years since we last saw athletes and you guys, and we are eagerly anticipating the opportunity to work with your daughter and son. And we really look forward to the opportunity to get back there on the field and compete. I will leave you with this. St. Augustine once said, praise though everything depends on the Lord, and work though everything depends on you. We can do this together. We can do this collectively. And I think it's going to take us all pitching in and watching out for each other to make this work. But so glad to have you guys back, and then for the opportunity to work with your son and daughter.
All right. Let me just take a moment and pause and just highlight Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Winters in two very specific ways. Mr. Hamilton is obviously our chief sport medical expert here on campus. He is very highly certified. He is very active in his field as a practitioner here at the King's Academy, as well as a value adder to the greater community of athletic trainers here in our state and nationally. He continues to be an adjunct professor at Palm Beach Atlantic University in the field of athletic training. And along with all that comes with incredible contacts. And so he is dear friends with the senior athletic administrator for sport medicine at the University of Georgia. And so there's been interaction between him and that individual. In fact, we got our hands on some information that I don't know if it's necessarily readily available to everyone. But Mr. Hamilton has used his contacts. He has used his elite skill set and knowledge level and background, and has really, quite honestly, been our guiding light and our rudder to all of this. I'm a pretty bold dude. I'm a pretty clear communicator. But in these matters, I've made sure that I go through Tyler before I share any of that information, make sure that I'm on base. And then for Mr. Winters has just pulled down protocol after protocol from the CDC, from the FHSAA, from the NFHS. There has been some long days of piles of printed paper on his desk with highlighters all over it, notes all over it. And so when I engage these two individuals in conversations about our protocols, they are bringing an incredible amount of knowledge to the table. And so to both of them, I say thank you very much, because that's where I get so much confidence that, hey, we can do athletics and do it safely under these circumstances. And so thank you very much to both of them. Now, a couple questions that have jumped in and out of the chat box. There's a lot of them in there, which gets me excited. It means that our Kings community is hungry for this. They're ready to go. And we've got a lot of people here that are ready to link arms with us. So a couple questions about volunteering to help with certain things. We will probably keep all of the measures in regards to holding people accountable to protocol type measures. We will probably keep that all in-house with paid staff members. There is some accountabilities there that just I feel a lot more comfortable with when I know that the individuals are being paid by our school to do what we're asking them to do. So we'll keep that in-house. However, we could very much use some volunteer assistance to some domino affecting logistics that'll be challenging to navigate now, because we have all these new layers to things. And so we'll probably task our coaches with asking questions specific to their sport experience, because they're bearing an extra heavy burden under all of this. Another question that was asked was about cloth items. So every sport has its unique challenges under these circumstances. And so I'm going to empower our coaches in the coming days here to reach out specifically to their sport-specific parents and speak to some matters that are specific to their program. I'll give you a perfect example for football. Coach Allen and his staff will keep all cloth items, is what Coach calls them, on site here, because Coach Allen has a cleaning protocol that he just feels more comfortable, him and his staff, taking all of those practice jerseys through, their practice shorts, their practice shirts. He will do all of that right there in the field house. And so you'll hear about some other things that we are discussing that would be very sport specific. So I won't necessarily share all of them in a general format like this because they wouldn't apply to everyone. But our coaches have really bought in to the idea that this is a very fragile opportunity. I use that word not because I'm fearful, but because we have to thread the needle perfectly to make sure that our student athletes get what I believe is the life-changing opportunity to play high school sports. You see, our athletic department mission is to provide an excellent athletic experience with eternal impact. And that is a very, very short-term, short shelf life experience that you only get between like 14 and 18. I think coaches at that phase of life are incredibly influential. I think there's a great biblical example for the power of athletics in a young person's life in the New Testament. And so this is a fragile opportunity, and yet I believe it is totally worth it to try and thread the needle perfectly on this for our student athletes. So again, I do just want to highlight some things, and then we will close out for tonight. And then you will get a follow-up email from me sometime tomorrow that's going to address some frequently asked questions. It'll be beyond the scope necessarily of tonight's topic, which was specific to practice protocols. And so with that being said, we will begin screening in the Loveland Athletic Center at 3:15. School ends at 3:05, and we need all of our student athletes to report to the Loveland Athletic Center for screening beginning Monday, August 24th at 3:15. The sooner we get that started at 3:15, the sooner we can let them in the locker rooms. They can't even go into the locker rooms yet. They cannot begin the athletic experience in any way, shape, and form until we have screened them in through that multi-phased process that Mr. Hamilton described. Let me say this, the SWAY app that Mr. Hamilton has referenced, the only thing your student athletes need to do right now is to put that SWAY app on their phones. We will take care of helping them set up their profiles in our student athlete orientation tomorrow afternoon. That brings me to my next point. Tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 in the Loveland Athletic Center, we will host a student athlete orientation to walk our student athletes through much of the same information that you've heard tonight. But I want to be face-to-face with all of our wonderful young people. Mr. Hamilton will walk probably close to 200 student athletes through setting up their profiles. His blood pressure just went up a little bit, to setting up those profiles on their SWAY app on their phone. If you have some concerns or questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. And if I can't get you the answer to it, I will get you in touch with Mr. Hamilton, and we will get you the answers to that regarding that SWAY app. But by and large, if they put it on their phones tonight or tomorrow morning before they go to school, that's all they need to do right now. And then we will take them through the screening process, and that will be Monday. We will start real honest to goodness athletics at the Kings Academy. I feel so blessed and grateful to be able to say that, because there's been a lot of, I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure. But I am 100% confident that we can do this and do this safely and give our kids their precious, beloved sport experience, and then hopefully change their lives along the way. Mr. Hamilton or Mr. Winters, is there anything you'd like to add before I sign off with everybody?
No, I did see one question about who is being tested tomorrow, and just about the fall athletes just being tested tomorrow.
Mr. Hamilton, you're good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. Folks, we are really excited. We are really excited to make mission with your student athletes this year. Our coaches are chomping at the bit. We can't wait. Please make sure your student athletes attend the student athlete orientation tomorrow at 3:30. It will take about an hour. So we'll be done with them at 4:30, and we will send them out to the parking lots at 4:30. Everything will be masked up tomorrow for the orientation. Everything will be socially distanced. And then Monday, It's showtime, everyone. Lean in with us. This will be hard, but this will be worth it. God bless. Go Lions, everybody.